It started with a knock. Not a hard, urgent one, the kind that sets your heart racing, but more like the gentle tap of a neighbor delivering cookies. I opened the door with a half-unpacked coffee mug in one hand, a faint smile on my face, expecting someone to introduce themselves politely. Instead, two uniformed police officers stood there on my porch, their cruisers still humming at the curb, red and blue lights flashing silently. Behind them, a woman stood with a posture so rigid it could have been carved from stone. Her arms were crossed, her lips pressed tight, and her expression twisted in indignation, as she'd just caught a burglar in the act of robbing her own home. "There he is," she shouted. "That's the one I told you about. I saw him take the package." The taller officer shifted slightly, his fingers brushing toward his belt, not drawing his weapon, but enough to make my pulse spike. The shorter officer remained more neutral, standing with his feet planted and his eyes locked on me with that calm, professional seriousness officers often wear. "Sir," the tall one said, voice steady but firm, "we need to see some identification. There have been reports of package thefts in this neighborhood." I looked down at the box still in my hands. My name and address were printed clearly on the label, warmed by the sun, staring back at me like proof of ownership. "This is my package," I said, my voice trying to stay steady. "I live here, just moved in last week." "That's not true," the woman barked from behind the officers. "He doesn't live here. I'm the HOA president. I know every resident in this community, and this man isn't one of them." Then it clicked. This wasn't a mistake. This was a full-blown accusation. Welcome to Oakwood Estates, I thought, where the lawns are perfectly manicured, the neighbors are watchful, and the HOA president apparently has a personal vendetta against anyone she doesn't know. I hadn't even finished unpacking before my name was being dragged into neighborhood drama. I remembered the realtor's words when we signed the closing documents. She handed me a thick binder, 3 inches of paper, labeled Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association Rules and Regulations, and gave me a look that was half warning, half knowing. She said the HOA president was dedicated. Maybe a little too dedicated, I thought at the time. I had smiled politely, assuming it was just another eccentricity of suburban life. By day 2, in my new home, I noticed her standing across the street, arms folded like a soldier guarding a checkpoint. She watched me lift boxes out of my trunk, her face tight with disapproval. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stood there, watching. That night, a printed notice appeared on my door. It reminded me that personal property couldn't remain visible from the street for more than 24 hours. No signature, no name, just the whole letterhead, cold and impersonal. It didn't take much detective work to figure out who'd left it. Still, I tried to be a good neighbor. I joined the local community page online and started reading the posts. People were anxious. There had been a string of package thefts lately, porch pirates in broad daylight. And Karen, yes, that Karen was one of the most vocal members online, posting updates, blurry security stills, and urgent warnings. She constantly urged residents to report anything suspicious. I never thought suspicious would apply to me. That afternoon, I got a text alert. My package had arrived. A small gift to myself, custom coffee mugs with my initials. Something to mark the start of this new chapter. I stepped outside and saw it sitting there on the welcome mat. I bent down to pick it up, and before I could even turn, I heard her voice cut through the quiet. "Hey, stop right there." Startled, I turned to see her marching across the street like she owned every inch of pavement, phone already raised, like she was collecting evidence for a trial. "I've got you now," she said, voice triumphant. "You're the one stealing packages." I blinked, still holding the box. "Excuse me, this is mine. I live here." She narrowed her eyes. "A likely story. The Patterson family lives there. They've been here for years." "You're definitely not them. They moved out," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I bought the house. My name is Michael Chen. Look, it's right here on the package." I turned it so the label faced her. She didn't even glance at it. "I'm calling the police." "Don't move," she said, stepping back while dialing, her voice carrying across the street, loud enough to draw the attention of a dozen neighbors. "Yes, 911. I've caught the package thief red-handed. One by one, neighbors began to appear. A couple stepped out onto their porch. Another leaned against a mailbox. Phones were raised, eyes fixed on me. Karen gestured like a town crier. This is why we have to stay alert. Bob, Martha, look at this man. I'm not stealing anything, I said, raising my voice to be heard. This is my house. This is my name on the box. Some faces in the crowd shifted uncertainly. Others seemed ready to believe me, but Karen's voice was the loudest. And the loudest voice often wins. When the patrol car arrived, Karen rushed to meet them like a child greeting Santa Claus. The officer stepped out, calm but alert. She launched into her report before they could speak. Officers, thank you for coming. I've been monitoring this area for weeks. Packages have been disappearing non-stop. And today, I finally caught him in the act. That man right there. I even have pictures. She held out her phone triumphantly. The officers took it silently. One approached me. Sir, we've received a report that you're stealing packages. Can we see some ID? Of course, I said, trying to keep my hands visible and movements deliberate. This is a mistake. I just moved in. My name is Michael Chen right on this package. I can show you ID, the order confirmation, anything you need. Karen wasn't convinced. He could have forged all that. The Pattersons are the real owners. The officer examined my license. This matches the address, he said. But we still have reports of theft. I understand, I said. But I have the order confirmation, and my doorbell cam recorded the delivery less than 30 minutes ago. Karen pressed forward, showing the officers a blurry security image and an email she had sent to the HOA. The man in this email, wearing dark clothes, matches him exactly, the taller officer said, voice steady. The tension hung over the porch like thick humidity, heavy and suffocating. The officers carefully reviewed the evidence I had laid out, my license, the shipping label, and the email confirmation. Then the shorter officer leaned in to check the doorbell footage. The video played clearly as day. Delivery, porch, me picking up the package. He's telling the truth, the shorter officer said. Karen's jaw dropped. That doesn't prove anything. He could have ordered that as a cover. He's probably hiding the rest. And he fits the description in my email. The taller officer crossed his arms. Ma'am, the description says, man in dark clothing. That could describe anyone, she huffed, indignant. I'm the HOA president. I have a responsibility to protect this neighborhood. Do you have any concrete evidence that this man took packages that weren't his? The officer asked. Silence. Then a voice from the crowd. An older man stepped forward. Karen, I think you made a mistake. I saw the moving trucks. The Pattersons told us they sold the house. They introduced me to this young man. He turned toward me, giving a sheepish smile. Sorry about the trouble. Welcome to the neighborhood. Karen's face flushed crimson. You're all being fooled. Mike, call your wife. She'll tell you the Pattersons wouldn't sell to someone like him. That's enough. The officer snapped, cutting her off. Ma'am, you've made a serious accusation. We've reviewed the evidence. This man owns the house and the package. You've filed a false report. And regarding the alleged package thefts, filing a false report is a crime. He paused, voice low and commanding. So is harassment. I suggest you return to your home immediately. Karen glared at me one last time. The HOA will be reviewing your case, Mr. Chen. We have rules about who lives here. Ma'am, the officer said, voice dangerous now. That comment is bordering on harassment. Go home or we'll be having another kind of conversation. Karen spun around and stomped back across the street. Her front door slammed with such force that her decorative wreath toppled to the ground. The officers apologized for the disruption and began to pack up. Neighbors started approaching me, shaking my hand, offering cookies, or just murmuring apologies. Many shared their own Karen stories, nodding knowingly. 3 days later, a formal letter arrived in my mailbox. Emergency HOA board meeting. Topic: recent security concerns and public disturbances. The room was packed. By the end of the meeting, the vote was in. Karen was removed as HOA president by a decisive 6-1 vote. Reason cited, abuse of power and harmful conduct. A motion was passed for a full investigation into her actions. Then came the twist. The vice president stood up and played footage from another neighbor's security camera. Karen appeared, unmistakable, walking up to porches and taking packages when no one was home. Not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. She hadn't just falsely accused an innocent man, she had fabricated a crime spree to justify her own power trip and push a neighborhood-wide surveillance system, conveniently supplied by her brother-in-law's company. The HOA pressed charges. Mail theft is a federal offense punishable by up to 5 years in prison and fines up to $250,000. When the police confronted her, she didn't yell this time. She barely whispered, "But I'm the HOA president. This is my neighborhood." "Not anymore," the officer said firmly. "If you thought HOA drama couldn't get any wilder, think again." Smash that like button if Karen had you shaking your head, and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories from behind the white picket fences. Because in some neighborhoods, the real crime isn't theft, it's power.